seems like hands and feet are the two things that everybody has so much difficulty with. And the primary thing with both is that they tend to appear so complex. And the whole approach to drawing, both actually, is taking and approaching from a really quite simple point of view. Now the first part where we really take and deal with the foot, and I'm going to go through several things here, basic, just sort of the shape, the structure, and then we'll do some of the muscles and stuff. But the first thing where the foot really begins at the ankle. That's where we start. So if you look at the ankle, what we have is the shape, where the way the tibia and the fibula come down, it creates sort of a horseshoe shape to the thing. So what I'm dealing with then is we're looking at this to really visualize this shape that's coming across here, really fitting over the front. You really feel it's like a cap fitting over something. This is really the part, in fact, that there's actually, it's not just a line, there's thickness to it. There's a corner, you have a corner that comes out, this corner goes away. And the basic landmark that we focus on is the fact that the outside is low, the inside is high. And actually, you have to really push that, because you see it quite often. If you're not consciously thinking about it, it's very easy to just reverse it and something like that, and it really looks sort of funny. So you really got to keep that in mind. So we're always focusing on this angle going across. Now, to starting out very, very simply with the foot, you really go for the gesture first. And actually, we can going back and look. We go back into the upper leg a little bit. We're coming through. We're looking at the profile now. If you look at starting at the knee, that we came down from the thigh, the knee coming in, the calf coming out, and the leg on the inside, or the front, being up. You can really sort of first start thinking of this. Well, this is just a simple line that feeds in that we've got going through. I'm treating it very, very simply now. It's simple. Now, taking this simple shape to start with, and this is really the problem most people have trouble with, is they make too many lumps. Okay. Start with looking at the foot is to begin with as being almost a sort of a right angle, 30-60 degree triangle here. So if you come down, it's this. And in most cases, that line is practically a straight line. You have to imagine the foot has to fit inside a shoe. Okay, that's really, but this line is a very, 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 very simple line. And you can actually think of this as just as something that flows in to start going through here. Now, when you start getting away from the profile, then that's when we start getting into a little more difficulty. So I'm going to start actually from the back, and we'll work our way around the back. It becomes important now that you look at the back of the wall. First of all, you can see how this is really like a rocker fitting on here. Now, so that what we have here is that the heel is actually offset. In other words, really the center of the heel is taking and coming over more through the center between the two bones. It's coming through in here. We've got this point here that you're working with. Now, so we have also, and I'm going to turn this around a little bit. As you look at this, see you're coming back, it's going over, getting in and down. That this is really, you can see where the bone actually comes down now. It's got, we have thick, I'm drawing this 3/4 here. So you can really feel that this is coming out this way. This is overset, set over. Now this comes through. Now this calcaneus bone It's taking, coming away, it's moving over. It's coming out this way. And it's got this shape, looking through, the back. So we've got this really, these corners here now. This is really coming down, fitting in. This is going over, the outside over here. So this is really offset from this whole thing. Now, so we end up with a hollow in here as we start to take and go back. Now, if we look at the outside again, you can see that this really comes down pretty low here. Really coming down, the way it fits down in here, the way it pulls down over here. When we look at this, the proportions of the foot. First of all, the foot is about the size of your head. Okay, the halfway mark on the foot is from here to here. Here, in other words, where your metatarsal bones start. So this distance from here to here, in other words, your arch. Now, that's the overall way from here to here to here. Then, from the little toe, from here, gets to from here and here. In other words, from this point here to here is your halfway point on the outside of the foot. The overall proportion is from here to here. So now we've got these distances. Now, the overall, when it's shaped, now starting out looking at this is really pushing out on this side. You can see that we have this hollow space through here. We've got this hollow space through here. When we turn this around now, you can see how from the big toe, this creates this big channel that is taking and going up this way. So if you look at this now, now, try to always think of this, of the bone here, the tibia, is taking and having a thickness. You know, there's actually sort of this arc that takes across through here. You can feel, you can see the angle here that takes and pulls up. We're going over, and we're coming out. This is taking in, I'm going to drop this in tone here so you can get a side to this thing. And a little bit of perspective. This is coming underneath. Now, I'm going to simplify this whole thing now. The combination of your tarsal and metatarsal bones coming down to your big toe here now is taking and coming down at an angle. Like this. You have a center line here, going through, and we're pulling down, through, to here, and then we're moving out. Now, you can see that with the setback in here, it's really going, and this is an important part of the thing. You need to really have this as a conscious sense of what you're doing when you're drawing the foot now. Let me see, this is way underneath now. Here. Coming back, we're set and set over here. So we have this hollow coming through this to here. See, so that when you're looking from the back like this at 3/4, you can see that this section now, and I'm going to draw this almost like thinking of a cylinder here, going back in this way. The arch would be up here in the bone and going back. But this is going back in, so we have this pull coming through. So this is what we're seeing, all this now is going back into here. Now, this emphasizing this so much here, what this translates into when you're drawing now, going back to looking at the front of the foot, you can see that as we thinking about all this is going underneath, the inside of the foot then is relatively straight. With these are coming out this way, the outside goes off at an angle like this. So now, taking our simple shape that we've got going here, and looking at this a little, carrying that simple shape a little bit farther now, and we're turning it a little bit 3/4. So now I'm coming in with the idea of just blocking in very quickly, taking this, seeing, going over the surface like that. Now I'm drawing this as a simple shape of a 3D type effect. The heel is going out and back here. Now, what we have here is you have to think of the foot as having a series of planes. It's like in your hand, you have your center knuckle is raised and you slope from one side to the other. So we actually have that. You can see that you have your arch. This goes this way, and then it goes this way. So we have from this point here to the center here, the pull going this way, and we start to take, and now we're doing this. So in other words, we can also take and break this down as even simpler. Start with, okay, we've got this as taking even the top part here, seeing this is almost as without dealing so much with the shape here, to visualize this almost like a block that's taking and coming down like this. And then we get a series of planes now that are going to take and come out that's fitting onto this flat platform of the foot. So now I'm really turning this into a series of very, very simple planes that we're looking at across, down the side, and coming out on the side, coming through, going through this way. So it's almost like a design for a shoe, where you were carving something out of this. So we've got this pull coming down. So now we're really visualizing this volume as we come down, as these bones take and come down through here this way. Through here. Now, going back to the heel again. Now, the way the muscles come down to here, we have your Achilles tendon coming down and attaching to the end of the heel here. In other words, the tendons are come down and pull down. So if you look at the heel in profile here now, coming down, through, and through. Your tendon, this is the tendon for the gastrocnemius and the soleus muscle coming down and attaching here. Right at this point, there's actually a bursa, a pad that protects the tendon from the bone here. It's all attaching on the end here like this. So what we get, looking from the back then, we get at this point here. Let's draw this in a little different color now. So now we're talking about this. We have the tendon attaching at this point right here, coming down. So we can feel this. So this is a strong pull that we get coming down through here. Now, so we feel the shape of the bone here now. So this coming over and now, one of the primary characteristics of the foot is actually the padding on the foot. Much more. We haven't talked about muscles at all yet. We're just talking about just general shapes of things. The biggest shape that we really deal with is the padding on the foot. Now, the padding on the foot is really like your footprint. You walk on the sand or wet cement with bare feet. You see this shape. Now, the pads on the foot, of course, are functional. They take and work where we take and put the foot on the ground. So you have this whole ridge along here. You have the heel, and we have the points on here. That's where the padding goes. So this is really very, very, very thick that we're dealing with. So when you look at the bones then, I'm going to add the pad here, the pad of the foot, and the heel particularly. Now, you can see it, I'm taking it's going to go like this is the thickness we're dealing with now. This is really, it's a very, very thick shape, or this shape in here. The pad goes underneath the bone here. Actually, in a profile shot, if we look at the way the bone comes down here, that pad will take and come up around the corner. And this will come down and go like this. So this has an awful lot to do with the overall shape now that we think of in terms of the heel coming through and down. So we're talking about the bone, the tendon, and the pad coming through. Okay. Now, as we're going through all of these different parts now, coming through, and you're feeling these things, the inside of the foot now. This is where we're drawing that the inside becomes a straight line. The outside is curved. This is pulling around. So as we come through now, work around. So as I start to draw this again, looking from the inside, like over the arch, I'm taking and I literally draw over this surface like this, picking up the tendon in the back, and we come down and feel the heel back here. First in your mind now is visualize this whole section coming forward. And we can start to see the pad as I draw this pad. It has to take and come from around here, goes through, and it goes in. So we're coming across a corner and turning and going in. Then we're coming out through, out in here. So you can see as we're going over the surface, coming down, going in. Now, what happens in here is that on both sides you have these abductors. You have large abductors and flexors that are taking and coming down from here, coming across from here, and going across this way. We also have a whole series of muscles that are coming from inside here or going out to the toes this way, just like you would in your hand, coming through. So we've got this shape coming across here. We have a abductor for your little toe area here, coming from here, going from here, and then going across through here. Okay. So the shape then, we're looking at this point here, we're talking about something now that is pulling across from here and going over and fitting into here. So you can see this pull coming across from here. We think of where the bone is, and then we're thinking of the pad of the foot taking coming across, and it's going underneath. This way. Now we've got this thing coming through. Now, when we start coming into, let's just think of the big toe for a minute. You're coming through. You have your tarsal bones. And here, in other words, like your wrist. You have the two rows of bones that come through to where the arch is at this point right here. Now we're dealing with the big toe. If this comes forward now, this way. Now, underneath your big toe, you have these points here. These are like your sesamoid bones. They're like your kneecap. They're like levers that the muscles they can pull over. They're not actually welded to the metatarsal here. They're sitting on top of this point here. So you got these two bumps here. So as we come down, now let me draw that separately here for a second. We're coming down, you look at the bone, you notice that it's arched, same as in the hand. Got this curved surface, come down, and corners. So there's a ball in here, and we start out the joint, going through, and we come out again. But underneath you've got balls here. Okay. If you're thinking of this as now, just imagine yourself walking on this ball. Well, you don't. You have this big pad that is protecting your foot underneath that, coming through this way. So we've got, this comes halfway into the joint here. This is coming down, you've got this big pad, so we have the joint here. The pad now, you can see, is coming up underneath that. So that's what we're talking about right here. You've got the pad coming up underneath here. Here's the knuckle, comes through, and you feel the thickness here. This pad comes out and is turning right underneath this way. But now you can see where much of that roundness that we often feel here coming through. You can think of where the corner of the bone is back here. Here we've got the actual, you can feel the corners of the bone here coming down. Your Achilles tendon coming down through here, going through. And all of this is taking and tucking, coming out, going through. And it's working over this bony structure that we're dealing with. Now, as the toe pulls out here, as we come out of this part here, it's important to be really conscious of the fact, this is again something that will come up again when we deal with the hands, is that the pad of the foot goes halfway to where the joint is. So if you're looking at this, here's the joint right here. The pad is coming all the way over here. So then we take and we get the knuckle again is square here, and we're stepping down to here, and so we get the pad of the big toe then coming out the big toenail on that. I have a friend who has a friend who lost his thumb in an industrial accident, and so pretty hard to work without a thumb. So what they did is they took and removed his big toe and put it in place of his thumb. And he said it's really pretty amazing. It looks like a big toe, but it works like a thumb. But the idea, and this is the interesting point that I did not realize until quite recently, that most of your balance is due to your little toe, not your big toe. That you can lose a big toe, but you're really in trouble if you start losing little toe. It's much harder to walk and maintain a sense of balance. So this is an important part here. So it's the big toe, so now you can see where I'm pulling stuff going over, thinking of the squareness of the top of the knuckles coming down, and the pad. Since we're talking about pads, the big toe actually has, and the way to think about this is 3 pads. Going through, round, and then the one on the end. So it's this really thick volume there. And we step down as we look at this more larger in profile here. You come through, you think of the corners of the knuckle coming down. The shaft, which does not touch the bone really, and the pad coming down this way. And the pad here in the joint is over here, and this is coming down that way. What that creates there is from the pad of the foot to the knuckle creates a diagonal line inside. So that when we're drawing this then, and this is actually, you think of wearing thongs, you have this space in between here that we then take and we can see, and it's always a good idea if you can, I'm stretching the point here, that at this point you probably wouldn't see that, but I'm taking and creating this bit of a hollow so you can, that we would take and feel these things. Notice the pattern I'm creating here, that we're going from a horizontal to a down, to an out this way. And with these knuckles, then we would even have more of a play because you got an extra joint. Remember, you look at the foot, just like your fingers, like your thumb, you have two joints here. Here we got three sections, 2 and 3. So we got this working out that way. So we've got this play of these things going down. So you feel this is pulling in, going through, going down. Now I'm going to take and it's got a clean sheet here, and we'll take and start working with the outside and go back up to the leg a little bit. Now we'll draw a little larger scale here. Going back up into the leg here. This is repeating a little bit what we dealt with last session. Remember that this ridge of the tibia is really the point. This line across here is the line that we really feel where the muscles start taking and pulling down into your. So we have all of your extenders that are taking and pulling out through this way. So if we start, the fibula is in the back here, so we're pulling down. I'm drawing this slightly 3/4 view now. Feel the shin pulling out. Always try to feel that there's actually a corner here. It's not just that. And you get the fibula pulling down, pulling out of here. Right over this surface, feeling the arc. Thinking of this as a simple line, feeling the pull down, coming through. Think of the bone going back, feeling the tendon coming down to that. Thinking of the pad. Now, the simple formula that I use for taking and drawing the side of this, taking the pad into consideration as I'm doing it, is just a very, in other words, I'm just taking and doing something like this. Now that just as a simple lay-in line is taking in the indication of this, the bump at the end of the bone here. Okay. Now the simple volumes that we've got going down through here, and down through here. Now the two, really probably the two most important, or actually there's three, but two groups of muscles are your peroneus longus and brevis muscles, which are taking and pulling from in here. Okay, take and come down and go behind your ankle bone. Okay, the brevis is attaching over to here. The longus takes and cuts underneath the foot and comes over and attaches over here, underneath the beginning of your big toe. This is going all the way underneath the foot, but we're starting up in this area right here. We really see these as very clear-cut line of the tendons along this point right here. And so we're feeling that going behind the fibula, sometimes we feel the line coming across here. Not always, but almost always we feel this line of the tendon. The muscles actually are stopping someplace up along in here this way. One muscle is on top of the other muscle. So these are your peroneus longus and brevis muscles. Okay. Now, the mate or matching movement to this is your tibialis anterior muscle. This is a pretty good sized muscle. This is pulling from in here. And again, we talked about this before. This comes down and goes underneath the foot this way, and then takes and attaches right next to where the other one was attached. They're both attaching at the same spot right here, just on opposite sides of the bone. So what we have then is we're talking about these two mates now, one going through in here, the other taking and coming down, going through, and takes and cuts across and goes underneath the foot coming through here. So quite often we feel this is a very, very strong shape then coming out of here. this way. Okay. Now, in between we had all of the extenders that are coming through, the common muscle with all of the different, and pulling through all of this stuff coming out, going out to the toes this way. Now there's actually an extend, this is the extender longus toe. You have a brevis, which works out of this area right here and is going diagonally underneath to the points. This is the muscle that you quite often for dancers becomes a very, very prominent shape that we see. So this will be taken and become a rather full form in here that these other tendons are going over. And these are going out to the different toes then. So now we're getting this volume here, and I'm going back. We get the Achilles tendon back here, coming down. Got the heel coming through, coming in. Got the pad of the foot coming through, coming out. Then we start working out into the toes themselves out this way. Now, you need to feel this corner here a bit more. Through. Going out. Now, there's all kinds of straps now that are working over this surface. Now, we also have a big toe muscle, which is equivalent to like your thumb. You have these muscles that cut across and going underneath this way. Well, we have exactly the same thing, except we have the distance in here, so this tendon with the big toe will be coming off here like this. And this takes and comes across, and the muscle then is going back up in here through this. Now, so if I take and let's take, you want to feel these elements here. Now we got a corner here. You're going over the surface. You've got your pig eye. You need to maybe pull all this back a little bit. With this coming through in here. And across, your tendon is coming up through in here. Well, feel the bump where we have this bursa and your Achilles tendon. Got the pads coming through, stepping down. This is a plane across here. You want to feel this really comes out. That pad is way thicker than any of those you can probably imagine. Coming through in here. Now, as we start coming out to the toes, what you try to vision now is that each one of the toes has a certain characteristic shape to it. So we take in this, the idea with this is a pattern type thing. The big toe, of course, is somewhat more like a screwdriver, let's say. Your next toe is a little bit squarer. The next one starts to be a little pointed, or we say rounded and pointed. Then we start to become more pointed until pointed the little toe, very definitely pointed. So but each one of them has a different look to it. Now, the shapes that you deal with. Okay, going back, we're talking about the fact that the pad of the foot is bigger than the top, just like the palm of your hand. That we take it and we have an angle from the knuckle. We have an angle from the knuckle here, going down. Here's the joint underneath the pad in here. As the bone comes out, I'm not drawing the thumb, I'm not drawing the big toe now. It comes out this way. Then we're taking, and as you start to go through these steps, you have 1, 2, and 3. This. Pad of the foot going down through here. This pad is coming over here. You have this diagonal going across this way. You have a space in here. The pad of your toes actually goes up halfway now through here. So again, you've got this, this. As you stand, your toes are going continually flexing like this. So you're always grabbing the floor and balancing yourself. So that what goes on with the toe is going to be going straight out this way. And then as you're balancing yourself, gripping the floor this way. So what we have then, generally though, we have this plane that is going, so when you're looking straight at the foot, I'm going to give you a very simple formula. Is to look through the front, through, and I'm using the standard, inside is straight, outside goes out. Now, as I come through here, I'm giving a little bit of a bunion. Coming through, pushing down, going across. Now, hit the knuckle, through, down, and big toe, going over, get space in between. Now, what I do here is I take and treat this section, the first part of the toe, I treat that like a cylinder. My thinking now is a cylinder going away from me. So what I do in the drawing, I'm just putting a tone over the surface. So watch what happens here as I go through this now. I'm just taking and drawing this, thinking of this knuckle here, goes back. I come through, hit the knuckle, come down, hit the toe that's coming out toward me. So what I've done is this, that, just using a little bit of tone. So each one of the lines, and I really recommend that as you're drawing toes, count. You find it becomes less embarrassing down the line. What you're taking, you see, I'm just drawing over the surface, through. And we have our basic setup for the toes. Pretty simple, actually. So now, the idea of taking and using this tone as the thing is going away from me to hit the top of the tool, well, we do the same thing now for the arch. Coming in, and you're starting to feel. So, see what I'm doing now is I'm keeping very simple, very whole on pointing. Now, the area that most people have difficulty with is when you start to show the underside of the foot. Now, what you have to keep in mind, that when we're doing the underside of the foot, that we have to make a transition from the foot into the leg. And it's a transition that becomes the hard part. Okay. So, in doing that now, let's make a typical angle here that we get, foot coming up. First, I'm going to draw this like a plank. Just so I want you can see how I'm visualizing this thing. This is just a plank that's going out that we have to take and attach to this cylinder going back in. Now, if we draw a line straight across like that, which is what a lot of people do, they'll take it, can tie all of this in, and then they try to do something here. Well, it's always going to look like a pad that goes inside of the shoe. What we have to do is we have to take into consideration the distance. The pad is a raised surface. So as I work at this now, I'm thinking, okay, here's the big toe area. This is the shaft going back up that way. We're going up and fitting into this surface. You see what I'm breaking this down now? It's a very, very simple type of thing. Got the heel that's coming back down around. This is going over. We have a side, and we have a plane that's going through, and this is working around. Now I'm taking and building this thing now. And as I'm doing this, I'm taking and thinking dimension the whole time. So now as I draw this thing, I'm taking and going over the corner. So I'm pushing, I'm going over this surface that's going down. Now I'm feeling this pull, we're pushing down that way. So we're getting right away now, I'm emphasizing this pad up here. The shaft, we would have the knuckle up in here. You'd feel the side of this going up to it. The shaft, toe, and then here I'm just going to treat this as a, basically you see I'm drawing the pad. This will be coming through. Now, this surface down here, we have to be pulling through. Coming through. I want to avoiding drawing lines that are closing this thing off. I want to come down around over the heel back here. I push the side. I'm working with lines that are going over the surface to describe the form. I'm coming around with that. I feel pulling out through here. Where are these toes would be out here. It's always a good idea to keep in mind what the actual shape of a shoe is. We take just a pattern of it here. We have the women's shoe particularly, it becomes a little easier to take and actually see it. So we see the small heel, and then we generally have a fullness on the big toe side. And this side takes and comes out, and we get this. This is the pattern, say, of the bottom of a shoe. So what I'm doing is I'm coming out, I'm compensating now, and so we want to feel this whole side is pushing down this way. Going over the surface, take it over the surface. Going back, we do now up here we would have the ankle bone, and we're going through. We would feel the arch up here. And we feel we're building this up even farther now. But I'm not going to draw a line across there. I want the eye to move through. So the whole ankle, of course, would have to be a lot thicker up here. Coming through, we start to pull. So everything is taking into consideration now the dimensions that I'm going round and over these surfaces, feeling the pad coming through. Feel the side. You feel these as the shaft going back, turning. Corners. You can actually take and start to feel where the bones would be coming through the joints here. Just come down, pull through. Now, there are a whole series of other muscles and stuff that we haven't talked about that take and really are, we don't see them drawing-wise. They don't function for us. They're underneath the soleus, they're coming in here. They're going through this point, going over to the underside of the foot. And part of this, and there's basically roughly, I think, 3 layers of muscles that we're dealing with that come across that are pulling here. So in this view, very possibly you can start to see not only this coming across over to here, but we would start to feel some of the pull of these things coming from here. But this is really the basics now of dealing with the foot. We want to see all of these elements. You want to see the planes. Now, so I'm diagramming the plane over this, and down. You feel this coming through, coming across. Got this. Feel the knuckles out here, through. Feeling the volumes going over the surface. The toenail becomes a tool for helping to show the dimensions of the toe. It becomes a way of taking and showing the 3D. So the knuckles go over the surface of the knuckles, come down, As we come over down into the cuticle area, we're drawing over a surface. And then we come out, and you see this is the surface that's coming out. Then we can pull the big toe, the padding, up underneath the surface. So again, you're dealing with the 3D, carrying past the knuckle, carrying through. Best way to practice is to sit on the side of the bed and dry your feet looking in the mirror in the closet or somewhere else. And start to play with them. Now, this gives you a pretty good start on a thing. Everything revolves around the basic structure of the thing. You're talking about the bones. I've talked very little about muscles now. We have all these muscles that do pull down, and we do feel tendons that take and pull out of here, coming through. You pick up the knuckles in here, right over the surface. But very rarely do you actually take and get an opportunity to take and deal with all that stuff unless you're dealing with a close-up with somebody's lying in bed and their foot sticking out at you or something. It's usually we're dealing in very, very, very simple shapes. Notice that even here, even though I'm talking about muscles and bones and stuff, the actual line here, practically a straight line. Very little taking place here. And even if I come in here and I want to make the shapes and planes in here stronger, I do it working to the inside. Now as I pull this line forward, this is still staying there. I'm dealing with these planes coming through. We get the feeling for the warmth, and this is where the problem comes in, is that we see all of these bumps, but the outside contour is simple. Okay, well, now the first place I'll really focus on get gesture, but at the beginning I'm really taking in simple feeling of how the ankle fits into the foot. Well, very basic, feel pulling through, wrapping underneath into the instep. Feel the calf coming from the back, come down into the heel. Now, important part here is to come around that heel is to take and as that comes forward, really think this is going underneath. So I'm really follow through going underneath. Then as I'm coming into the instep, I'm really coming through and coming around, pulling out to the pad of the big toe, and then coming across. So I started with a very, very simple shape. One of the things that giving you the sense of volume on a foot, well, actually any place in the figure, but is to really take and concentrate on the overlapping of the forms. So now coming back here to the inside ankle bone, feeling coming through in front, coming down. Notice as I'm doing this now, I'm taking and really concentrating on wrapping around the corner as this fits in. And I'm pulling from the back. Now, even though I can see very little of where the Achilles tendon attaches to the calcaneus bone, I want to fall through. I'm really thinking about it, and I'll actually emphasize this a bit. Just a slight change in the pressure, and come through and down, and I actually want to feel that heel pad, and again going underneath. I'm spending a lot of time here now just trying to get the idea across of these overlapping and going underneath and over. Now, come through the same thing here. The actual bone has some thickness in here, so when it comes through, we want to also feel the tendons, muscles pulling through. So again, overlapping, going through, feeling this is fitting in, coming over that surface. The outside contour is really quite simple. Where we get the feeling for the volume is how we work to the inside forms. So pulling across here, the change where we get the tarsal and the metatarsal bones coming through. Now, wide on the outside here, coming down. Now, here, this is the pull here. This is actually, I think, the tendon for the big toe going down. And coming through, you feel the pull. This is actually heading, which is different. A lot of times this is confused with the one where the tibialis anterior would be coming down and going underneath. This is taking really now, this one is taking coming forward, coming out. Now, as I draw up into where the toes are here, I really visualize this whole section as almost as if it was an amputation in here. I want to see, as we were talking in the lecture notes, that there's the pad comes halfway between where the joint is. So I'm visualizing this almost as if there was an amputation here. This is a flat, or I should say a diagonal plane going down. So the knuckle then is way back up here, going over, feeling the corners coming through. Feeling this has come down, this is the side, then we can feel the pad, the pressure going over. I'm drawing over that surface to emphasize now, where we can feel the pad coming through. And then as I draw that pad, like I did with the heel here, come down, this goes underneath. Here, and come over the big toe pad here, got to visualize this is going underneath. Then they come forward, seeing again to the knuckle then, going across, it's a box, squarish form. And thinking of the shaft itself, going through, in, going around, then the pad for the big toe. So doing the knuckle, square, coming down, wrapping around over that surface, feeling the shape of that pad now coming through, and then taking and adding the nail. The nail becomes a way of helping to show the three-dimension of form. What's around and going over. Now, try to give a little bit of space between the toes, where I really try to focus on the angle of that plane going back to where the knuckles are now back in here. So it's a good idea to, before you go too far along, is to take and actually block in very simply. I've got the overall shape, but we need to just get a very, very simple statement of the toes. So you find that it becomes I've said this probably several times, is that it is a good idea to count as you're doing the drawings now. So now again, we feel the tendon going through. Look for the knuckle going over the surface. Think of it slightly squared here. Feel the corner back in here with the tendon pulling. Stepping down, pressure is on this foot, going down, feel going again across the knuckle, and then go through with a slightly squarish shape to this toe. The next one, come down, you feel, see, actually as I'm doing this, I'm thinking of each separate section of the bone as it comes forward. Okay. Through, stepping down, going through. Now, as progressively farther as I get back, I will tend to simplify the drawing as we're going through. Now, I want to come across, feel this corner. Now, feeling the plane coming through, feeling the tendon pulling down. Actually, try to sense that they're right at this point now. In the center here, we actually have a change in the plane going from one side to the other. Now, from here, I want to take and pulling tendons in front again, trying to come through and feeling the bone on the outside going through. But that gives us a fairly good start for the foot.
Okay, now we're doing the same sort of inside view, but a little more of a profile. And the idea is to keep, I can't overemphasize the whole idea of making the thing very simple to start with. So I'm really pushing, even if you're thinking the angle going across, very basic kind of shape. Now, from here, again, starting to the point where it's visualizing the ankle bone right over the surface. You really feel that pull coming through. Now, from here, as I'm coming down, looking, going, I'm always visualizing this volume. Now, we've talked about this whole section in the lecture of how we feel this whole shaft of the big toe and the muscles taking and going back and fitting into the heel area. Now, so, again, I'm really wrapping this around, so essentially I'm visualizing this as a cylinder going back in. Now we come back, where the bone is coming back out of here, the calcaneus bone, pulling, feeling the actual corner of the bone, the tendons attaching, coming down. How does that come down with this? And then I'm again actually thinking of the pad of the foot pulling out. So I'll emphasize this slightly. Now as I'm coming across the whole thing again, I'm going underneath over to the other side of the foot. So I'm feeling these surfaces going down, coming through. Now, as I come down from here, again, you've got a very, very simple shape here to start with, locking in. So what I do now is I'm really thinking of the bone. Come to look to where the knuckle is here. I'm thinking of the squareness of that knuckle, coming across one side to the other. Then visualizing the bone coming down. Then the pad taking and coming from that, pulling down, coming across, and again going underneath this way. So you're really thinking is always wrapping around. So same kind of, let's go back up here where we can feel, and this overlapping, you feel where your tarsal bones are coming out. And want to take and always visualize again this overlap, where the ankle bone is on the outside going down. On the inside, remember, it's high on the inside, so I need to pull this up a bit, start feeling the pulling through in here, this angle across here. And we also have the actual corner of the bone here to start to go over the surface, coming through. And coming in now, you feel the Achilles tendon coming down and fitting into that. So again, pushing these forms, fitting back in. I'm using the toe and just pushing back, going through, getting a bit of a corner, pushing back. I look, the change takes place here now, before where the tarsal and metatarsal come through. Again, it's the corners, pushing it. There's actually a dividing line here now as we come down through this way. So the other side is going off, but the contour is still simple, even though at this point you feel an overlapping taking place as this comes forward. The outside is still continuing going off in this direction. Now, they come forward. Here we can actually feel the tendon. Now again, pulling through to here. Going over the knuckles, come down the side, feeling the fullness of this pad. Going through. Approach the big toe, again, we're looking at the squareness. Remember, the pad comes halfway at least. And we come up to the knuckle, cross the corner, going over the side, feeling the shaft. It's fitting into the pad. Down. Then we feel the pad of the big toe. And I'm visualizing this is as a volume. Got the knuckle over here coming out, going around and over that surface, and then visualizing the nail as a way of going over the surface to help show the volume of the toe itself then. Now we've got basic things again. Try to indicate space in between the fingers, the toes. And as you go through here, I'll take and block in very simple form of shapes now. Notice what I was doing. I was actually going through the different steps and actually viewing it like a series of steps going down, going through, down, going through. Again, taking the time to count a little bit. Move through. So now that gives us our basic blocking in of the foot. So you're thinking of the very simple shapes coming down. Visualize the corner. I'm thinking and seeing the sides, feeling tendons pulling in through the side of the foot. Now, this gets us again, this is just essentially a repeat now of the other angle, just showing a little bit more of how this fits in. Okay, now let's carry through this one a little. This is the outside of the foot now. Okay. First, really feeling the gesture of the whole thing. This kept very simple. Foot is slightly raised up, so we're getting one of the things when you do have something raised up like this, what I suggest you do is to take and actually give some kind of indication of the fact that it is raised by giving it a little bit of a shadow. So it can come through. Now, very simple outside shape, just essentially getting the gesture. Now, as I come back into this, come through, thinking of the bone, and going over the surface of the bone. Now, as I do this, I'm really conscious of the fact that there's two separate bones. The tibia and then the fibula. Now, as we take and pull down, I really try to feel that there's this corner coming across. And I want to feel this edge, the edge of the bone here. This point here. Then we're setting back to fibula, coming down. So again, you're thinking of the angle across, coming down. There's the bone is coming through in here. Now, in this view, we feel then the calcaneus is quite high here. The leg foot is raised up, coming down. So I'm really thinking of the bone through here. And what's happening here now is that you have the peroneus longus and brevis tendon here, taking and coming across the end. So this is always a very prominent shape if there's any kind of tension on that. So we want to feel that line coming through, and then we start feeling the muscle behind going through. This carries all the way down then to the brevis is going to the bone for the end of the bone for the little toe, and the longus is taken actually cutting underneath and goes all the way over to the underside of the big toe here. Now, come back in here and go back again is to feel the Achilles tendon now coming down and pulling into this. And so you can feel going over the surface. And this is fitting in. You get a pull behind. Now, as I draw out this, I really take and visualize this whole section as having thickness. So quite often I'll take and in doing this, then I'm feeling that heel under, but at the same time I'm going over the surface and using as the way of taking and describing the pad and the bones as they come down. It actually takes and is also creating a tone that gives us a little bit of the dimension at the same time. Now we feel the pads, I'm going over and feel where the bone is coming through here. And I give the tone pushing the side to back here. Now, I back up. I want to feel the arch, feel the bones coming out, coming through. Now the change takes place now. And we're pushing down. And in doing this, I'm taking the corner, filling the corner through. Now, we have those extensors, brevis, taking, and this is what creates a shape in here. These muscles are taking, going diagonally across, now remember. So we can feel, and these are underneath. But in a flexed position like this, the shape becomes very strong. And if you have dancers, for instance, they become very, very, very pronounced. Now here you can feel the tendons coming over the top of that. They're starting to pull down. Now, looking through, I'm looking to where the knuckles, little toe is, making a cross all the way over here, and visualizing again that plane underneath. Now, on the little toe side, it's not quite so obvious the amount of wrapping underneath as we have on the big toe side, but even still, we feel that pull across, and then we start to take and come out. And so you're still feeling the knuckle coming through, coming out, stepping down, and through. It'll be very, 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 very subtle here. The bone actually in the little toe is incredibly small. Then, again, as we work away, I take and go through steps, keeping it really quite simple now. Try to take it here, emphasize the break in between the toes. And now the big toe, as this comes forward, you feel the pull, the tendons pulling down through here. Now we feel the big toe coming off from behind, and very clearly try to see the squareness of that knuckle. And as we take and we pull down, and the big toe itself now going off in this direction. And the nail helps to take and show. Okay. Each time you're going through, you're going over these knuckles, feeling. It becomes too easy to take and sort of lose sight or to not draw the actual form, that they get preoccupied in just the shape. But you want to take and really draw. Now, as this surface comes down, we want to feel it. You have, in this case, where he really got, let's emphasize this a bit, really got his foot or heel off of the ground. So we want to feel this pulling back. So we want to feel this pulling down to this surface. So we got this plane coming through. We can really feel the plane stepping down in here. Then the tendons are taking and coming through. And they're all running up. And we want to feel back in here. We get this hollow being created through. And we pull up along the side. And then eventually we're getting up in here into the solus and your gastrocnemius on top. Okay. Now, the underside of the foot has its own particular problems in that the tendency is to take and actually end up flattening it out. In other words, if you take and draw the shape of the foot coming down like this, it's going to look like an insert to a shoe. And then I talk about using it's like a pin the tail on the donkey type thing. So we have to really concentrate on pushing the idea that you have a series of planes. Even though you're dealing with very short distances, you have to really focus on the overlapping of the forms. Again, taking and basically seeing it quite simple to begin with. And as I pull, think of the going into the leg, I really focus on this is cylinders. So cylinders going back and through, around, feel the pull, foot coming out, shape of the big toe. So I'm just blocking in a very generalized thing here to start with. Now, how you get away from this flat thing here is by really focusing on dimensions. So if I start here with the ball of the foot, the pad under the big toe, I'm really thinking of a corner. I'm envisioning going over the surface, feeling this volume. Maybe going around, it has a side going back down on the other side where we would be going to the knuckle of the big toe. But I want to go out of my way to visualize this as a plane that is going back in. It's like a cylinder. That's actually what the bone is doing. Is we want to feel this surface pushing back in this way. And as I come back looking at the top side here, I want to be going back in and seeing how this is now fitting into the ankle. So we've got, going back to the ankle, the bone is in here, going across. See, what I'm trying to do is avoid drawing a line directly across the form. I want to take and focus on the overlapping of these forms. So there's always some kind of air coming in between. Yeah. Overlapping, overlapping. Keep working over the surface. Coming through, coming over, feeling this, coming up front of this. So you can see those simple lines now, how they take and get the eye to take and move around. Now, when I come back into here, the idea is the same thing. This is a surface up here that's turning and going away. What I do is I go up and over this surface now. It's pushing it back. And we can feel we come down now, I take and we get this stuff is pushing in. So here, so now all of this now is getting the sense of going back, down, and in. Now, so what is getting this going in, now we get the side of the heel coming out. So I'm still pulling back, and I want to come back from behind here. I feel that Achilles tendon coming down, and the actual bone then is going over in here. And I feel the pull down. So as I go through, I'm pushing down and here. I want to feel this side. I want to feel the whole side of the heel now coming up. And as I come across this part, I'm focusing on the fact that this is a corner across here. It's come through, this changes direction going down. So I'm focusing all the time on trying to give this dimension to this thing. So we can feel as I'm drawing this thing, and then I'm taking and showing the side of this heel. And it'll taper over as we come across over to here, as this part of the foot comes to the pad on the outside of the foot. So As I go over here, then I'm taking and pushing now the corner. Coming over through, and I'm coming across on this surface, so I can actually use a tone coming through. I could take and actually think of this as a way of drawing that is focusing on maybe the idea of the core coming down and using reflected light then to take and show the idea. But this is basically drawing planes. Now to come through, now as this comes up this way, taking and I push this back, letting this pick up a little bit of light, and then I come back over to, and now here I'm taking and drawing the actual feeling of where that bone, the little toe would be coming through, or actually thinking of it as a joint in here. Now come over, surface is turning, going down. So now you have these very clear-cut planes that are taking place. I'll leave this a little bit more light in here, and as I come down through, start to pick up these pads a bit more. So now, come through, I can be taking and I've got this really stepping back now. Come around, I can still take and hit a bit of a corner in here, so we can feeling this is coming forward and feel as we're stepping down then to the center. As we go through here, pushing down, letting the light hitting here. Then as I come back up, pushing the tone, coming through and around the pad in the center. Now, as we were talking with the other things of really feeling, I mentioned the idea of using like an amputation. We want to feel this surface comes across, changes direction, goes down. This is thick across here. We could take and feel this pull. So now the pad comes up. The knuckle is back here, and the knuckle is in here. The pad is coming to at least halfway. So what I do is now I want to go over. I'm drawing this. I'm really thinking now this is a cylinder right through here. So this line itself then is indicating the volume, so as I come through, I'm going over this surface, same way of going over a cylinder. I'm feeling the pad, feeling this coming out of here, so now we can see the thickness that is taking place through here. And I'm feeling the corners, throwing aside. Now the big toe itself. Now in this view I'm not seeing the actual knuckle, but the whole big toe, the shape now, we actually have the sense of 3 pads on the big toe. 2 here and 1 on the end. Now again, to give this dimension you have to think of a side to a bottom. So I'm using again the tone as a means of taking and coming through and giving us a side, coming through, feeling an end, and dropping through. So now you can very clearly see, you see this shaft fitting into that. So you keep looking at these shapes then, you're going over and feeling the overall pattern now come through. Now, in drawing the toes, you have to keep in mind that here I was drawing a cylinder. While we go through, you actually have a succession of cylinders that you're taking and dealing with. So that you have to visualize these fragments as we take and start to go through. Now, here I can actually feel a piece of the knuckle up here, coming through. Going over, I'm thinking of the cylinder going through. Well, feeling going down to the next knuckle, going through. And then taking and second section. So you're really, I'm drawing these cylinders. Now, let's take and block in simply here before I get too far along. overlapping. So now, useful, the thing that makes the cylinder understandable is actually the line going over it. So when we have the opportunity of using, say, a cast shadow from a toe, it becomes a means of taking and showing the volume. So I can take and come through, and then getting the pad by taking and going around over the surface. But here, this is really all stepping down quite a bit, so we see very little now of the actual joints. This, of course, here would be in tone. And by pulling, feeling the space in between, right? You feel this has a surface that's going down, and here, coming across. Good. Never miss an opportunity to take and show overlapping, going over, going around, and of course all of this would be in tone. And we push the lift back, that can give a little bit more going through, and we can come in and hit the corner here a little bit stronger. But as I'm doing this, I've left the path for the eye to take and travel around and through, so that we haven't cut it off like we would a shoe pad.